We're delighted to have with us Professor Preeti Ramamurthy, Professor of Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Washington. Thank you, Professor Ramamurthy, for making the time to join us here today. Today's talk is titled City Lives, Rural Ties, the Aspirational Worlds of Middle Migrants in Contemporary India. This paper has been jointly produced by Professor Ramamurthy and Vinay Gidwani from the University of Minnesota. Today's talk, as part of NSU School of Humanities and Social Sciences Distinguished Webinar Series, will allow us to listen to Professor Ramamurthy talk about this really exciting and interesting subject for about 40 minutes. Before that, we would ask our dean to do introductory remarks. Following Professor Ramamurthy's talk, we will open the floor for a Q&A session where we would hopefully be able to have a vibrant and engaging discussion on the subject. Without further ado, let me now welcome Muhammad Rizwanul Islam, Professor of Law and Dean, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, North-South University, for his introductory remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Manju. I formally welcome our distinguished guest speaker, my esteemed colleagues, dear students, and other participants. Good evening or good morning, depending on wherever you are. I had the pleasure of reading Dr. Ramamurthy's abstract and some of her related works. I haven't read the full paper based on which this talk is organized, but as I understand, she is talking about those people who are often missing from our academic discourse, particularly the discourse on migrants. Whenever we talk about migrants, we think of people who cross borders. But the notion of migration is perhaps not always about crossing national boundaries. Even within national boundaries, there is some sort of migration that migration experts from various disciplines have already recognized. As I understand, in the case of India, there are about 10 million or so people who may be migrant within the country. And Professor Ramamurthy has used a particular phrase, middle migrants. So she's not talking about those who are almost at the point of destitution or who have settled in a place, rather, who have moved from one place in India and they are settled in another part and they live sort of some parallel life. They have their roots in the countryside, but they are located in a way in the city side. So I'm sure she will tell us a very vibrant story, a story that is perhaps not often told. And maybe even we can relate this to our country. Just in a couple of days, we will see so many people from Dhaka would leave Dhaka. So they have a route somewhere in the hinterland of Bangladesh, but they live in Dhaka. So maybe in that way, we have a parallel story somewhere in us in Bangladesh. So I'm really looking forward to the talk and also looking forward to the questions and comments from the audience. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank our distinguished speaker once again for delivering our talk. I look forward to this exciting session once again. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dean Islam. Thank you for those introductory words. We too are looking forward to hearing from our speaker. Without further ado, Professor Ramamurthy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much to Professor Nazia Manzoor and Dr. Rizwanul Islam, Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at North-South University, for their invitation and that generous introduction. It is an honor to be presenting this webinar, especially in the context of the excellent research of NSU's own Center for Migration Studies and following in the footsteps of Professor Naila Kabir, whose scholarship on gender and development in Bangladesh has inspired me and my students for many, many years. This research, as Dr. Islam pointed out, is a collaboration with Professor Vinay Gidwani at the University of Minnesota. It is based on our book of the same title, which will be published by the University of Washington Press later this year. I very much look forward to your comments and questions. As Dr. Islam has very kindly already pointed out. He's done some of my work for me. In 2011, according to the last census conducted in India, 454 million people, or 37% of Indians, were counted as internal migrants. That is, as he said, people who move within the country. Since then, an estimated 80 to 100 million more have joined this pool. In addition, there are many migrants who move back and forth from their villages but are very hard to count. Estimates of this population, called seasonal or circular migrants, range from about 40 to 100 million. These are mostly agricultural laborers, construction workers, and brick kiln workers who Jan Bremen famously described as wage hunters and gatherers. In comparison, in Bangladesh, internal migrants are estimated to be 13.7 million. Here too, the consensus is that there's not enough data or research on internal migration. A growing concern is that climate change is going to increase internal migration in Bangladesh rapidly over the next 25 years. Above the most destitute class of internal migrants is another large body of working class migrants. This group is our focus. We call them middle migrants. They are neither the poorest nor the most vulnerable to exploitation. Their working lives in India's vast informal economies continue to be marked by hardship and uncertainty, but not utter abjection. They have been able to build a life of precarious stability in cities while retaining active connections to their rural homes. In India, the estimated number of middle migrants is 100 million or more. Many find a way to stay in the city for several years before circumstances, the death of a parent or ill health, pulls them back to their villages. Women may stay for a few years, savoring temporary freedoms until duty to care for elders or children, or the need to look after cultivation necessitates moving back to the village. Still others may stay till their later years or even permanently. Middle migrants have drawn less attention from scholars. We hope there will be much more research on middle migrants in the future. This talk, and as I mentioned, our forthcoming book, is based on the methodology of life histories and village visits. The book presents life stories of 14 migrants to the cities of Delhi and Hyderabad from over 100 that we gathered, and we went back to the villages with these 14 migrants between 2015 and 2020. Given the time we have today, I'm going to draw on only two of these life histories. The first one I will present is the history of Usha to illustrate vernacular working class forms of speculation which enable middle migrancy. Second, I will present portions of the life story of Rahman to illustrate working class ways of learning life lessons to become middle migrants and to craft moral selves by which they guide their behaviors and social conduct as what we are calling betweens. I'll conclude the first section by delineating the attributes shared by middle migrants, point out the dynamics of women's mobility and their agency, and the implications for action. I'll end the second section and the talk on a more philosophical note by elaborating on our conception of betweens. Betweens refers to middle migrants being between classes, not poor, not elite, between city and village, and between now and unknowable futures. Betweenness, I will suggest, is an important sensibility, a way of being and becoming with insaniyat, that is, with humanity. In a way, we are all betweens. Usha is the eldest daughter of a Rajput family, a caste high in the hierarchy of graded inequality, from a village in Balia district of eastern UP, Uttar Pradesh. She married into a family that owns a small amount of land, 3 bighas or approximately zero point 0.7 hectares. But no one in her marital family has tilled it for the last 3 generations. Usha's husband and her husband's younger brother chose to migrate to Delhi. The land is cultivated by backward caste sharecroppers, but the land has not been sold. One of the takeaways from our research is that even as the city's gravitational pull deepens for middle migrant, land retains its affective value. It's more than property, it's passed down from son to son as the guarantor of the patriline. It is an asset that anchors a sense of personhood in place. It's also a sentiment and a promise, and one that travels with thousands of rural migrants who flock to India's cities every day, every month, every year. Usha has capitalized on the art of land to firm her foothold in the city. When Usha was 18, she married Dinesh Singh, who was a year older, in 1985. His family was poor, she said, but he was beautiful and so was I. My father said he's hardworking too, so this match will be okay. Her father sold 1 bigha of land for the wedding. That Usha's marriage was arranged to a man whom she had never met, also from a Rajput family, in a village 20 miles from hers, is hardly unusual, a recurring pattern in the life stories that we heard. When I went to his house after the wedding for the first time, I saw that they lived in a thatch hut. Soon after, my husband returned to Delhi. At the time, he worked in a plastic factory. My mother-in-law ill-treated me severely. She'd insult me in all kinds of ways. There was no room for empathy for a girl wrenched from her home. After several months, Usha ran away and went back to her mother's. I stayed there till my husband returned to the village because his grandmother had died. He came to take me to my in-laws, but my mother said I won't let her go back. They mistreat her. He reassured her I'll take her to Delhi with me. But then he took me back to my in laws. My mother in law gave him money for his train fare back to Delhi, but not for mine. This is when the young Usha took matters into her own hands. She got 70 rupees for the train fare from her father and insisted that her husband take her back to Delhi. But her early days in the rented one room in North Delhi didn't provide any respite from her in law's violence. Her husband's younger brother, who had landed up in Delhi in search of work and was staying with them, tormented her constantly. One time he pushed her into a vessel of hot oil when she was frying pakoras. She still bears that scar. Yet Usha found a way to endure. Usha's neighbors in Samaypur Badli, people of all castes, describe her as a caring, resourceful person who helps them out. Although Usha is secular in her social interactions, around the issue of paid work, she remains oriented to her caste identity as a Rajput woman. That is not what Rajput women do, so she will not do any domestic service work or work in a garment factory in Delhi, situations in which she'd also be supervised and possibly harassed. Yet, the hardships of her upbringing and the anxieties and aspirations that gnaw at Usha have driven her to imagine and economize, to speculate, to secure her family's footing in Delhi. In story after story, we found the pivotal role the women have played in orchestrating their husbands' livelihoods or engineering their families' rise from financial precarity. In Usha's case, land has been her stepladder to petty accumulation and middle migrancy. When she first arrived in Badli in 1988 with her husband, he was earning 500 rupees a month, from which 200 went towards rent. After a year, Usha heard and saw that people were building huts in the empty land next to the village of Badli. This was government land. So, at Usha's initiative, they occupied a plot and built a jhopri, as you say in Bangla, jhuggi in Hindi. For 2 or 3 years, they tapped into overhead electricity lines until a young boy in their basti was electrocuted, at which point authorities gave residents formal connections. Usha's 2 sons were also born in the basti. In summer of 1990, their jhuggi burnt down. Her husband was working the night shift. Usha rushed to retrieve their most precious items, 2 attaché cases and a few clothes. In the attachés were every piece of paper, ration cards, bills, ID cards, certificates that Usha judged to be of established or prospective value. Paper documents that proved date of arrival, residence, and being seen by the state are prized by migrants since these can be pivotal in procuring the title to a plot when a slum is regularized or when after demolition evictees are offered compensatory housing. The fire scorched most of the 300 or so huts in the colony that day. Usha Ishwar, it was arson. They received 500 rupees in compensation. Usha remembers thinking, it's time we built more permanently. Her neighbors at the time, Rajasthanis, were migrants from Rajasthan who were construction day laborers. They had begun to refashion their own dwellings into more pakka structures. Usha went with them and carried back basketfuls of mud on her head. She couldn't carry as much because she'd never done this kind of physical work. Each day, when her husband returned from the factory, he layered bricks with the mud to build walls. In the meanwhile, the 200 rupees they saved from rent, she put into a monthly deposit in a bank, and when it accumulated for 2 or 3 years, she put that into a fixed deposit. Usha has a knack for being resourceful. To be resourceful is not only the capacity to be bold and inventive in the face of constraint, but also to sense an opportunity and seize it. Her speculation, a distinctly vernacular working class speculation, recalls an older meaning of the word referring to imagining and contriving the yet to come, not the ways we use the word speculation today for greed and gambling and excessive profit making. Another example of Usha's speculation is when, early after her migration to Delhi, the government erroneously issued her two ration cards. She sold the subsidized provision from one at market prices and put the money in a bank. When it accumulated, this also went into a fixed. Over time, Usha moved her family from the rented one room accommodation to a self owned thatch hut, to a brick and mud hut, and ultimately to a concrete dwelling in Badli. All with the savings that she had ferreted away and a very prudent stewardship of household expenses, what she calls bachat or shonche, as you would say in Bengali. Once they put in the concrete walls, she built two rooms upstairs that she rented out. She then divided the main floor and the ground floor into an L with a small room carved out of the larger one in the front. The room next to this, that is to the right of the main room, was also theirs till her husband very foolishly sold it for 3,000 rupees. She purchased it back for 15,000 rupees and then rented it out to the man that she had bought it back from. Soon after, she sold one of the first floor rooms of the main house for 40,000 and made up the difference. She now rents out the room on the top floor of the dwelling, the room next door, and the small undivided divided room in the front. Usha and other middle migrants we interviewed endeavor to solidify their place in the city by acquiring a plot or two, by squatting on land that is legally another's or on public land, or by purchasing a site with a formal title. Or, in Usha's case, both. In 1995, Usha purchased two sites in Mukundpuri, 8 kilometers from Badli, where she heard from her husband's co-worker that plots were being sold. Mukundpuri was once undesirable as it is located next to Delhi's huge Balaswa garbage landfill. The plots are on a tract that was agricultural, and scattered plots continued to be cultivated until as late as 2018. Usha bargained the property dealer down from 600 rupees to 400 rupees a square yard and paid him 20,000 rupees for a 50 square yard plot. She confides the dealer was also a Rajput, so he agreed. By 2000, Usha had moved out of the Basti of Badli to Mukundpuri. When we first visited her there, the ground floor had two street facing shops. Usha had rented out one to a bangle maker who comes once a week and distributes the bangles for women to stick stones on. He was paying Usha rent of 1,000 rupees a month. Like this bangle work, there are many other forms of putting out home-based work which women in Delhi slums do. The other room was lying empty. 2 years later, with the help of savings from her Delhi-based brothers, Usha had transformed the bare bones house in Mukundpuri into a char manzili makan, a four-story mansion. Two floors were for each of her sons and their families. One is for her and her husband, and the fourth was to be rented out. Her youngest brother, who's a medical technician, had opened a small diagnostic laboratory on the ground floor. I've paid back all the loans I took to rebuild this house, Usha said. That is how I manage things. I've been very smart about such things from the very beginning. In March 2018, I went back with Usha from Delhi to her natal and marital villages at Balia in Balia district in UP. As we neared her marital village, she instinctively pulled her sari over her head and low over her face to become embodied once more as a respectable Rajput daughter-in-law. I recalled how she had told me she didn't even know her way around this village because she'd been confined to the house when she was married. As we pulled up in front of a big concrete house, Usha gestured around proudly. Veranda, 3 rooms, bathroom, latrine, kitchen. She had built it before her elder son's wedding 4 years prior. The house lies empty and locked up when Usha and her husband are in Delhi. But she goes back at least once a year. This year, for example, she spent a couple of months putting in tile floors. Her mother-in-law lives in the Jhopdi next door, the same one where Usha first went as a bride. They are estranged. So, what are the implications of Usha's life story? It tells us about the attributes of middle migrants. First, middle migrants have managed to establish a foothold that allows them to continue in the city. This capacity of tikna or staying power takes speculation, that is, resourcefulness, artfulness, persistence. Second, middle migrants are normally able to meet everyday expenses of running their households and in some instances generate modest surpluses to tide them over shocks. For the time being, even with their foothold in the cities, the economic certainty of a secure future is tenuous. For middle migrants like Usha, the imagination of the not quite knowable future remains a key ingredient in their survival skills and speculations about anticipated gains. Third, migrants are by necessity versatile geographical actors who learn to claim, transform, and defend urban spaces against intrusion and leverage gains from one location to consolidate their footprints elsewhere. Fourth, middle migrants practice translocal householding, whereby multiple generations, with a few members living in the city and a few in the village, distribute resources and care across them. Fifth, despite being urban dwellers, middle migrants remain oriented to the rural and the agrarian through their cultural dispositions to gender, caste, and religion. Thus, for many middle migrants, despite years of urban existence, the city continues to remain Pardesh, another land or country, and the rural places of origin, Desh or homeland, the place to which many, but certainly all, aspire to return. So, what are the implications of Usha's life history for women middle migrants and mobility? Women's migration is significantly different to men's. One of our findings is that women initiate migration from village homes to escape domestic violence and the drudgery of doing all the domestic work of cooking, cleaning, and so on, and to care for children and elders in their extended families. Often, they also flee from conjugal homes in the city to escape domestic violence or seek their own health care in native villages. Marriage migration, which is the term used in official statistics, is inadequate to describe these dynamics, which reveal how women are tactical agents who are mobile between the city and the village across translocal households and at different times in their lives. Cultural prescriptions against women's mobility, their movement outside the home and against moving freely in the village and in the city, keeps the patriarchal family with its dependence on unpaid female labor in place. Even when women do paid work, it is for lesser pay and must be juggled with their unpaid labor and responsibilities. Middle migrancy gives women some capacity to negotiate their mobility, to be tactical agents who choose when to move and when they are forced to care, even as they maneuver within constraints. Finally, to address the larger issue of mobility injustice or constraints on movement for women, we need to make visible the importance and value of domestic work and care labor for the household and for society, to change cultural prescriptions on women's mobility which keep the injustice or constraint in place, and to fight for public provisioning and financing of reproductive labor so working class households, especially women, can thrive. Let me now shift gears a bit to a second life history, that of Rahman. Through this life history, we can ask, how does one learn life lessons to become more beings, more than an exploited and oppressed being? How does one craft a moral self? Rahman is a punctilious man. He's in his 50s. When I first met him, I had requested an Uber taxi to take me from my mother's house to Hyderabad Urban Labs, a non-profit which works on urban issues that we were collaborating with. His car was spotless, his manners impeccable. I started chatting with him, and on hearing his remarkable migration story, I told him about our research and asked if we could interview him. He agreed to come to Hyderabad Urban Lab offices, which happened to be adjacent to his own working class Muslim majority neighborhood of Bhola Nagar in Hyderabad. Our appointment was for 11 a.m. He showed up on the dot of time. He told us he could spare up to 90 minutes for our questions. Then he had to leave to resume his duties. Rahman arrived in a neatly tucked white shirt that had seen better times, but it was crisply pressed like his black trousers. Black socks and polished black shoes rounded off his appearance. He struck a picture of unrelenting dignity. In the years since, and I meet him very often every time I go back to Hyderabad, this first impression of him has only grown stronger. Rahman drives for two gig economy taxi companies, Uber, and its Indian equivalent, Ola. He told us that on a typical weekday, he wakes up at 5, cleans his car, gets ready, drops the youngest of his three daughters at a bus stop where she catches the bus to college. Monday through Thursday, he checks into Ola at 7 and clocks out at 5, total 10 hours. He then clocks into Uber and drives for another 5 hours till 10 o'clock. Thursday through Saturday, the weekend, he works overnight for Ola Uber, as the case may be. He snatches sleep during idle moments. He says he's restless until he reaches his daily earnings of 2000 rupee day target because he must set aside 567 rupees, at the time 684 Bangladesh taka, per day towards the EMI, or the equated monthly installment, for a new car that he'd purchased earlier that year. He earns 5 to 6,000 rupees weekly for his Uber engagements, and that covers his diesel costs. From Ola earnings, he pays his EMI and everything else. Rahman is a quintessential middle migrant. He meets his household needs and a little beyond. Over the years, he's parlayed his surpluses from his earnings as a driver to build a couple of rooms, and of utmost importance to his daughters, a bathroom above the single room that his family used to share with his brother and his brother's large family. But things were not always this way. Rahman arrived in Hyderabad in 1974, alone, by bus, from his village of Pampalli in Medak district, 70 miles away. He was 8 years old. Rahman's grandfather was wealthy and respected landlord in his village, But his father, he told us, was a drunkard who squandered away nearly all their land holdings. The family was left destitute. His mother had to toil as a wage laborer to support the family of seven brothers and three sisters. There was no money for school. Rahman became emotional as he recalled times when his mother didn't have enough to feed the children or herself even one decent meal. She would mix wheat flour, warm it with water, and asked us to drink it. It's called ambil. Rahman grazed the village patel or headman's buffaloes. He was paid 60 rupees a year. We met this patel when we visited Rahman's village, and he told us Rahman's mother worked extremely hard to bring up her children. Memories of his mother's years of struggle against poverty in the village continue to govern Rahman's outlook on life. It defines his betweenness as a migrant to the city, still tied to his rural roots. Her punishing life of resilience remains the psychological and the emotional center point from which his own story unfolds. The third oldest of his 10 siblings, Rahman's recollection of arriving in Hyderabad remain vivid. It's the same story he shared with me the first time I rode in his taxi. My mother gave me 10 rupees, a cloth bag with two jawari rotis, millet rotis, one set of clothes. He walked from his village to Zahirabad, the nearest town. He boarded a bus to Hyderabad and she told him, disembark at Raniganj, which is a bus terminus. From there, he walked to the other side of the lake, Hussain Sagar, and descended to the lower level where his brother worked in a tea shop in an area called Domargoda. Miraculously, he found his brother. This was an 8-year-old. His brother got him a job as a tea shop boy. He worked there for a year and a half, now earning 25 rupees a month. It was a tiny establishment with no running water. Rahman slept on the footpath and went to Hussain Sagar, the lake, once a week to bathe and wash his clothes. He used the same tiny bar of 501 soap for both. After that, he worked in a small provision store where he was paid a monthly salary of 200 rupees and three meals a day. The owner would ask him to deliver dry provisions to customers. On one of those rounds, about 2 years into his job, he met a bookie who took horse racing bets at the racecourse. The bookie asked, why don't you come and work for me? So Rahman agreed. His job now involved sorting out currency notes into separate denominations. After some time, the bookie said, why don't you learn how to drive? So at the age of 12, Rahman started learning. A friend of his older brother was a driver, and he let him practice in his employer's cars when traffic was low and the employer didn't need the car. Rahman would then pay other drivers 20 rupees per outing to build his driving skills. This way, I became proficient without attending a training school. In 1981, at the age of 15, his brother got him a driving license through an agent at the Road Transport Authority. The official age is 18. Because of his lack of driving experience, it took him another year to get his first job as a driver with a Sardarji or Sikh homeowner who also lived in Domargoda. By driving around, he came to know the city entirely, inside out. This wasn't hard, he told us, because he'd already walked to most corners of it. He left his first driving job after a few months because the Sardarji owner would drink constantly and fall into a stupor. But across from the Sardarji was a small company that made wafers and biscuits. He joined that company's MD as a driver. A year later, he switched to another job as of another Sardarji who owned a hotel that was in a place called Vijayawada and had a branch in Hyderabad in Domalguda. 20 days a month, was on the road between Hyderabad and Vijayawada. This was a journey of about 180 miles. His 5 years in this Sardarji's employ has left a deep impression. He was a very fine man, Rahman told us. No matter how poor a person, he would always shake his hand and act as if he was their equal. He was very good but very demanding. He had a talent for getting work out of people. It was from him that I learned the importance of respecting others and of always being on time. Rahman's life tracks the story of Hyderabad's transformation into a global technology hub. He has a very clear account of the city's meteoric rise from the late 80s onwards, a period which coincides with the liberalization of the Indian economy. After independence in 47, the Indian state invested heavily in electronics and technology companies in Hyderabad. With liberalization, global and local capital quickly took advantage of this infrastructure and the talented pool of tech workers there. Rahman, from his point of view, recounts how the growth of the high tech city to the west of the city, the old city, with its glitzy multinational towers and fancy apartment blocks, and the rise in foreign visitors who landed in the new airport, all led to more people needing taxi rides. In 1988, Rahman moved to a job with the auto rental giant Hertz, and a few years later, he became a courtesy driver at Novotel, which is a hotel chain. It was here that he picked up a little tutti frutti English, that is broken English, which he still uses when he ferries foreigners to and from the airport. How are you, sir? Would you like a bottle of water? Is the temperature okay? Shall I make it cooler? And when they are leaving, have a good journey. Through a contact at Novotel, Rahman landed his new job, for which he had to interview in English. The two sisters were Anglo-Indian, the owners were Anglo-Indian Christian uh, sisters who were also race club bookies. They trusted me a lot. They tell me, if you do wrong, tomorrow you will be wronged. So I never do wrong to others. In addition to driving, Rahman ended up handling all the money that came in. Once during an income tax raid, he drove around a car with its trunk stuffed with cash for hours around the city until the police went away. In 1992, when Rahman married Farida, the daughter of his eldest sister-in-law's sister, the Anglo-Indian sisters arranged for a videographer and transportation to and from the wedding venue. They've since moved from Hyderabad to Bangalore, but Rahman remains in touch with them. They fed me, they taught me how to speak English properly, and before I met them, I didn't know ABCD. I'll never forget them. Rahman's belief that an injustice is always repaid in kind serves as his moral anchor. He is what we might call a practical idealist, a person who has crafted a moral disposition that guides his behavior and his decisions. A person has a moral self to the extent that moral notions, values, ideals, goals are central to their self understanding, and which in turn motivates felt responsibility to act in ways consistent with those notions. Migration and his experiences as a migrant have been a fecund source of Rahman's moral transformation. This is a phenomenon that we found in many migrant stories. When he drives his taxi, Rahman exhibits a professional demeanor that verges on the detached. It's tempting to describe him as the ideal neoliberal subject, task oriented, attuned to the dictates of market discipline. But to leave it there would be to impoverish the force of events that have etched their lines that orient Rahman's conduct. The drunkard father who squandered his family's resources, the mother who single handedly toiled and kept the household going, the village house that had to be abandoned, the unexpectedly generous patrons who took a fresh from the village street kid under their wings. Rahman's life story reveals how certain events have congealed into affective knots that trigger his habitation of space and of time, the deeply felt memories which orient his world. One incident particularly stands out. In 2005, he was working as the chauffeur for a managing director of a company and requested his help for getting his second daughter into a private school. The MD asked Rahman, "Isn't there a government school near your house?" The implication, know your proper place. The hurt and humiliation of the moment lingers. "I cried," Rahman said. He vowed then and there that he would educate his daughters in private schools even if he had to go hungry. He became visibly emotional, tears welling up in his eyes as he narrated this incident. Rahman and Farida sent their three girls to the best private schools in the neighborhood. His life centers around the women in his life, his three daughters and his wife. In all sorts of ways, he's disoriented the conventional plot of patriarchy. He didn't take a dowry when he got married. He told us on more than one occasion that when he saw Farida in a burqa after their wedding, he told her, take all this off. First, become a good human being. Although little educated himself, he encouraged Farida to finish her BA and then her MA in Hindi after their marriage. Then he supported her when she became a school teacher. His family and members of his working class basti thoroughly disapproved when he sent his daughters to private school and college. The girls, two of whom did engineering and the third commerce, are the most educated amongst their kin, both boys and girls. He's taught them how to navigate their way around the city that he himself knows so well. When the youngest had an exam at a distant exam center, he made sure she did a dry run, dropping her at the bus stop, telling her which buses to change, clocking how long it took. He wants them to be mobile and independent, not mollycoddled, so he refused to give her a ride in his car. Now that the girls are working, they do so against the prescribed norms of Rahman's community, but with the full backing of their father. Society's undertow is hard to ignore, though. Farida insists that their daughters wear the burqa when they step out. She's worried that if they don't hew to their community's norms, no one will marry them. That, of course, is how patriarchy works. When the youngest daughter asked why their mother doesn't have to wear a burqa but she does, Rahman told her, she's my wife, my wish, my preference. वो मेरी बीवी है, मेरी मर्जी, मेरी पसंद. If after you get married, your husband tells you you don't have to wear a burqa, then you can stop doing so. But till then, compulsory. The expectation that Rahman has a fully formed liberal feminist politics, we realized, is ours. Both the expectation and what counts as feminist. Early in 2019, he was dropping me off at the airport, and Rahman told me that the family had moved to a new apartment, a 3 BHK, 3-bedroom hall kitchen. The girls had been keen on this move for a very long time. They had been tired of being stared at by the men in their old basti. They had complained to their parents that they couldn't invite friends over. These worries have receded with the move. We have entered a new world, Rahman told me. At the time, the two older, Aisha and Nazneen, both work for Amazon, commanded a monthly salary of 50,000 rupees each. They cover the new apartment's rent of 10,000 rupees. The cost of someone to wash clothes is double here. They don't want their mother to be burdened, so they convinced their parents and bought a washing machine. Although Farida is adamant that the girls wear a burqa, Nazni now slips off to her waiting cap without one, and she's never worn a burqa at work in any case. The girls, like their parents, are full of adab and tehzeeb, politeness and refinement. Only the youngest wears jeans, but all three are experts at how to use makeup, having learned from YouTube. Rahman tells us he'll only get them married when they want to. He prefers it if they choose their husbands. He holds on to his old house in the Basti because once all the girls are married, he said, he and Farida will return there. He continues to go back to the village from time to time. When we went with him, he showed us the new water cistern that he donated to the mosque. He took us to the fields where one of his brothers, who works in Kuwait, has bought a plot of land. Rahman's daughters are tired of hearing his story of migration. For the girls, Rahman's past is a place of pain. Rahman thinks they believe that his childhood memories of the village are a source of shame. What they fail to fathom, he says, is how important it is for him to remember his origins, to stay grounded, to never forget the hardships that he's withstood. Rahman confessed that once he used to drink a lot. But after he met with an accident and seeing the worry on his daughter and wife's faces, he gave up going out to drink with his friends and he gave up his beloved motorbike. In their small house in the Basti, every Sunday in the evening, he would switch off his Uber and Ola app and the family would gather. Rahman would drink 1 quart, exactly 1 quart, no more or less, of Imperial Blue whiskey. His wife and daughters would have Sprite. They would chat, the five of them a family, happy and easygoing in each other's company, content to be together. But in their new apartment, Rahman notices that the girls scatter to their rooms. Each is absorbed with their laptops and cell phones with their earbuds on. He misses chatting with them. He worries that the larger house and the gadgets have individuated their lives. They, on the other hand, are very proud that their father, who first taught himself to speak a little English, now sends them WhatsApp text messages on the smartphone that they have gifted him, even when they are in the next room. To conclude, Rama narrates his life as a sequence of moments that have shaped the arc of his existence, each moment the receptacle of a vital life lesson: how to comport oneself in society. Rahman is a middle migrant who is a between in three ways: demographic, spatial, and temporal. Like Usha, he is in the middle as a category of migrants, neither elite educated and upwardly mobile nor very poor. As a between, he straddles the urban and the rural with social, psychological, and emotional reference points which are still significantly village facing. Even as a middle migrant with a foothold in the city, the economic certainty of a future remains a specter. There is no assured destination or teleological futurity. Rather, aspirations originate from the gap between what is visible in the present and what is envisioned in the future. Learning to tarry with the not quite knowable, to speculate on a better future, to harness hope as a resource is a spatio-temporal disposition, a survival skill that middle migrants frequently exhibit. Who knows what prospects life might hold? Betweenness as a sensibility, then, is an apt descriptor of the deeply meditative pathways through which Rahman has come to know himself as a moral person and himself in relation to others, of being and belonging with equanimity towards all, with insaniyat. Rahman, we came to appreciate, personifies the words of the poet Akbar Allahabadi. आदमी था बड़ी मुश्किल से इंसान हुआ. I was a man. With great difficulty, I became a human being. In these troubled times, it is my hope that we can all learn from Rahman and Akbar Allahabadi to cultivate our insaniyat, our common humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Ramamurthy. This was engaging, interesting, fantastic storytelling on top of being so instrumental in helping us understand middle migrancy and its many specific characteristics that are attributed differently in the two stories that you shared with us through Usha and Rahman. I have observations and questions, but before that, the floor is now open for Q&A. Members of the audience, if you'd like to ask something, you're welcome to ask. You're also welcome to use the chat box to ask or share questions and comments. Rizwan Bhai, do you have a question?
Yes. I typed that in. Should I put that or I should ask that, Nazia?
Nazia, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah,
So,
now I
sorry.
can hear you.
Rizwan Bhai, did you put the question in? Yes, I see. I saw a
Yes,
question.
I typed it in. I can. Thank you. I could type that again. Thank you.
No, it's okay.
I
It's
would.
the one about agency, right? Okay. So the question is, the agency that seems to be working for the middle migrants, does it work for lower migrants? If not, is there any particular reason as to why not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we have to hold open the possibility of agency for the people that you're calling lower migrants as well, because middle migrants actually were lower migrants, initially, right? That in fact, when Usha comes into the city, her husband has very little, right? And by way of comparison, her brother-in-law, which is that younger brother who had come in and stayed with them, their family has remained a lower migrant family, right? So I certainly think that everybody has the potential to be speculative, to seize opportunities as and when they come. But it's not everybody who actually makes it into the middle. And, I think the people whose stories we're telling are in that way quite exceptional, because they have managed to, in Usha's case, use her her sense of where the opportunity lies to grab land, right? And to then build on that, right? She's not just satisfied with going from a jhopadi to a mud house. She now wants to make it concrete. She now wants to expand. And once she's expanded and rented it out, she wants to move to a better locality. In other cases of especially women that we talk to, one of them again came in as a what we would call a lower migrant, right? As a migrant who didn't have very much. But her husband was a maestri. He was just doing work. Yeah, is maestri also the word you use in Bangla? To put the concrete or the mud on walls, but she made him into a thekedar, into a contractor, so that he could earn more money. In a third instant, there was a woman who belongs to the Nai caste. The Nais are the people who do the hair cutting and midwifery. She taught herself through YouTube videos and then going to a beauty salon how to become a beautician. She not only became a beautician, she made her husband also a professional hair cutter and opened a salon for him. So again, there's this kind of speculation and this kind of entrepreneurship that moved that family again into the middle migrant class. So certainly, I think we would, hold open the possibility that lower migrants can show agency and become middle migrants. But when we look at the middle migrants, they're doing it in particular ways through not just speculation, but I would also like to suggest, as in Rahman's case, through developing a moral center, through developing a sense of what is right and how you should behave with other people. This is also the case in Usha's case, where she's very very helpful to people in the neighborhood. She was very helpful to us. We were going into the basti every day, and we would often be without food for a long time, and then she would just pack up and send us food to eat. And that little room which I showed you, she allowed us to use that to be in that room for a few hours and actually meet the other people that we were interviewing from there.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful because, as you said, they are translocal. Their migrancy status is not permanent. There is a fluidity to it, even though they may have started at one particular level, whether it is because of the aspirational or inspiring mode of being and becoming that they embody. There is a transition towards the middle migrancy status, all the while keeping intact the root to the rural, as well as the original, initial, or even the secondary home in the city, and then aspiring to a third space. So there's a lot of movement happening identity-wise in terms of their migrancy status across space, across temporality. And what to me is really fascinating, yes, demography too, but in an affective register as well. And I noticed that in your work, there's a lot of interest in how intimate relations within the household, within the family, and affective relations within family members, or in Rehman's case, the random acts of kindness that he has received from people, they not only helped shape who these individuals become, in this case, Usha and Rahman, but the political economy is also shaped by these affective relations. At least that's my take, both from Usha's story and from Rehman's story. Using Rehman's story, would it be possible for you to shed a bit of light on how his affective relations with his wife and daughters in particular, and the household dynamic that progressed, starting from the initial relationship with the burqa being uncomplicated to then it becoming complicated when it came to the daughters, and then finally the daughters deciding to exercise their agency when it comes to how and in what way they want to communicate that particular relationship with their faith and their father. How would you think that these affective turns shape the economy, not just their livelihood, but also the politicized economy of the state? If
Yes, thank you for that really insightful, set of observations, I would say, because yes, you're absolutely right. In this work and in my earlier work, I've very much been interested in the relationship between larger political economy forces and structures and how they play out in intimate relationships. I think in this in the book particularly, we are thinking about embodiment and affect as a very important way that people are moved, right? And if we want to kind of go back to middle migrancy, they are moved into doing things, and the way they narrate their stories is as these moments at which they were moved to act in particular ways. So definitely, embodiment is very, very much part of the story we're trying to tell. And I think for the graduate students here, I would like to kind of nod to make some gestures towards the theoretical framework, which, we purposefully have kept very light in the book. If you want to read it, it is only in the conclusion of the book. The rest of it is all in footnotes. It's just the stories that come through. But for the graduate students in the audience, the people we are drawing on are Bordeaux, right? And this idea of habitus, and particularly Sarah Ahmad, whose book, Queer Phenomenology, is asking us to think about orientations in particular directions as being embodied, right? So I think we definitely are looking at embodiment as a source of knowledge production, right? And knowledge about oneself and how one then relates to the world. I think, your larger question of burqa dynamics, this, of course, Nazia, is something that you have thought about much more than I have. And so, I think I probably need to think a little bit more about uh, the temporality of that, right? That yes, as a mother, Farida is very much concerned about her daughter's lives and what will happen to her daughters over time. So I think for her it's a question of thinking as a mother will of the possibilities and impossibilities of this. Um, for the girls themselves, they have in fact now these very good jobs. They're two of them work for Amazon, one of them works for Accenture, right? So they have the income now to assert themselves, but they tend to do it at work. They don't, feel the necessity to do it so much in the communities in which they live. And they're all still very much respectful of their parents' wishes. So I don't think they would go against their parents' wishes in this regard. And I do think, that we have to uh, set this against the larger issues of what is happening in India. Hyderabad is a city which is 40% Muslim majority. It is contemporarily ruled by the Congress government, which definitely has, made uh, secularism part of its politics. So I think those are wider concerns that must be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really, really useful. There's something to be said about the moral geographies that eventually leads to the selving that we're talking about, the moral selving, the betweenness, especially in terms of Rahman's case. There's a lot more to think about, I would say. But we have a few questions from our students, and if you would allow me, perhaps I can read out one or two, and then maybe you can take whatever you want from there. Moeed
Yeah.
wants to know, based on your study in contemporary India, do middle migrants act as a bridge between rural and urban economies, or do they gradually detach from their origin? And he wonders whether middle migrants play a crucial role in transforming rural communities through investments and remittance. Would you like me to
Yes.
read the two other questions as well? And then you can quickly answer?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead and read them, and then I'll try to take them up.
Thank you. The second one is from Yasinur Rahman. He wants to know if middle migrants challenge existing social hierarchies in urban spaces, or do they eventually reproduce the same inequalities they experienced in rural settings? And the third question is from Nahreen Priyanti. Priyanti wants to know how the concept of betweenness shapes the lives and experiences of middle migrants, especially in relation to their cultural and geographic ties.
Yeah, these are all great questions. So let me just try and take them one at a time. So this question about the connection between rural and urban economies is a really important one. And, not just through investment and remittances, but as Mr. Moeed points out, this is also in terms of the kind of discourses as well as the dispositions that people come to believe in and embody in the city and the village. So let me give you another example of also a life history that we've done of also a Muslim man who is also a organizer. He's a labor organizer in Delhi, right? So Rahman is in Hyderabad, and this other person is in Delhi, and he very much wants his wife and son to move from the village to Delhi because, in fact, he finds it hard to send them money, right? It's not easy to maintain two households. He's not earning that much of money that he can easily maintain two households. So he wants his wife and his son, who's about 10 years old, to come from their village, which is in Bihar, to Delhi. But his wife finds it extremely difficult to be in Delhi. She misses the village, and in their village, which is in Bihar, she is used to living in a community around a courtyard. So his brothers have houses. His house is around a courtyard, and her whole life is around the courtyard. So coming to Delhi, living in a small room with a whole lot of other people, that's one thing that she doesn't get used to. The other thing that she doesn't get used to are this politics of these union organizers where men and women mix. So she's just not very comfortable in that, right? Where women are talking freely to men, where women are organizing, right? So she feels out of place, right? So talking about these geographies, right? You can feel out of place. So they decided that it's better for her to go back to the village and to live there, and that is what they have decided works for that family. So definitely, I would say that development in a sense in many villages now depends on these remittances, and the ways in which migration flows happen are very much about networks in villages. So, in another of the cases that we did, everybody, all the young men in the village, all seem to be going to this one ice cream factory, which is 1500 kilometers away in the state of Andhra, right? So, there's a way in which migrancy is shaped by social networks, but there's also a way in which feelings of being in place and out of place very much move people back and forth between the city and the village. So it's not always that you can translate what you might have learned and embraced in the city back to the village. It's also possible that when you want people from the village to come and visit you in the city, they only want to do so for a temporary period of time and they really want to go back to their rural roots. We now have a lot of other questions that have come up. Do migrants challenge existing social hierarchies in urban spaces? Do they eventually reproduce the same inequalities that they experienced in rural settings? I think the question is a great one, and the answer is one that is going to be that it's varied, right? Migrants sometimes challenge the social hierarchies that they are contending with in urban places. Sometimes they are shocked that they have to be contending with the social hierarchies, for example, of caste, even in urban areas. So, in Bostis, in Delhi and Hyderabad, people are living close together of many different castes, right? It doesn't matter if your neighbor is a so-called Dalit or untouchable caste. They may be living next to you. The person in front may be a Rajput or a Kamma, so-called higher caste, but people help each other out, right? That is the nature of things in an urban basti. One of the young people that we met had no idea what caste he was. And he grew up all the way to school not knowing what caste he was. When he was in high school, his best friend once asks him, "What caste are you?" So he goes back and asks his father, "What caste are we?" His father doesn't tell him. This friend keeps on pestering him. "What caste are you? What caste are you? What caste are you?" So he keeps on pestering his father. Father says, "We are Harijan," which is that we are so-called Dalit or untouchable caste. So he goes back and he tells this best friend of his that we are Dalit. And this friend then says, "But you are someone we cannot touch." So this young boy says to him, what are you talking about? You touched me all my life. But at that point, their relationship crumbles, right? At that point, the relationship does not continue any longer. So, my answer to your question is that many times the urban gives you a space to break these gender, caste, and religious hierarchies, but it's difficult to keep maintaining it. It depends a lot on the communities that you see yourself part of, and it depends a lot on whether you make it or not as a middle migrant, right? The extent to which you're able to continue to be upwardly mobile, the extent to which you're able to continue to govern your life with what you think is right and proper to do. Okay, we have time for some more questions.
Maybe this is the last one. This is about the
Okay,
concept of betweenness and how betweenness shapes the lives and experiences. If you could maybe articulate that just for a little bit.
yes, certainly. I think with this concept of betweenness, what we're trying to get is to ontology, right? Like what do we as human beings uh, feel, and how do we use that, as we were talking earlier, uh, to talk about our lives. So, in many cases, people do feel, middle migrants, especially first generation middle migrants, do feel that they are looking back, both in time and in place, right? They're constantly in between. But this is also something that I feel as a migrant to the United States, right? I'm always in two places. I'm always juggling. You always are trying to make sense of yourself as somebody who is not only grounded in one place. And I do think, that we can think about this, as I said, demographically, temporally, and spatially, right? That when you're a young person, you're not necessarily thinking what are you going to be when you're middle aged or old, right? But as you get there in time, then you begin to think, my roots and who I am are really in the rural areas. Or for me, my roots are really in Hyderabad and my extended family in India. So definitely, I think this idea of betweenness, we hope, is one through which we can make better sense of our lives and our lives as they move geographically and over time. So very much we would say that being in these two places, being in these two time zones, being demographically in this group which is upwardly mobile, is definitely shaping the ways that middle migrancy is playing out in India. And we hope that the concept is useful in Bangladesh, but also in a place like the United States.
Thank you so much. It's 8:44 for us. That's an hour and 45 minutes. I would like to thank you, Professor Ramamurthy, for taking the time out of your really busy schedule, especially so early in the morning, especially as you're jet lagged, and to have this conversation with us about this very important book that is about to come out. The thing I particularly enjoyed about today's conversation is not only did we understand how middle migrants build their social worlds in contemporary India, but how grounded and rooted the stories of Usha and Rehman were. They were grounded and rooted in their lived experiences, in their lived realities, and your repeated interaction with them and the way in which you show care in your representation and the way you interpret their experiences That I think is particularly significant for our students here who are considering or who already do research in areas similar to the one that you're doing research on. There's a lot to learn for us, for our students and for us as well, in terms of when we do representative work that talk about lives and livelihoods of real people, how much care and how much attention there should be. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. I would like to also thank the School of Humanities and Social Sciences for organizing the distinguished webinar series regularly. It gives us an opportunity to listen to esteemed scholars such as yourself that we otherwise would not get the opportunity to. Thank you, Dean Islam. We're grateful. And thank you to our students for, as always, for bringing the thoughtfulness and the brilliance that they continue to demonstrate in the classroom in this conversation as well.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It was my pleasure. And thank you both, Dean Islam and Nazia, for having me.
Thank you once again, Professor Ramamurthy. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. And we hope that we will continue to have these important conversations going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.